It's soon to be back to the future for Canada. Despite his claims of being progressive and wanting to move Canada forward, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are going to take Canada back in time. One of his promises during the election, it didn't get a lot of attention, is to resurrect the court challenges program. He's promising $5 million a year to fund left-wing groups to sue the government in court. Ian Brodie is a professor at the University of Calgary. He was an academic in prior life, but from 2006 to 2008 was Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Stephen Harper, and he was there when the Harper government killed off this wretched program. He joins me now from his office in Calgary. Ian, thanks for joining me today.
Brian, good to talk to you.
All right, the Court Challenges program, people scratch their heads when they go, wait a minute, the government pays groups to sue them?
Yes, that was the basic idea. I mean, the program goes back into a bit of history, but what we think of as the Court Challenges program starts with the adoption of the Charter of Rights in 1985 and what we call the Equality Rights section of the Charter in 1985. The Trudeau government and then the Mulroney government set up the Court Challenges program to pay groups to sue it and to sue the provinces under different provisions of the Charter of Rights. I know it's hard to get your head around. Early in my academic career, when I was a specialist in this area, I'd go around internationally to try to explain to people how this worked in Canada, and they'd scratch their heads because usually the government's not in the business of paying for people to sue it in court, but that's what we did here in Canada for many years.
All right, so this is a program that brought about, or helped bring about, gay marriage. It was the Court Challenges program that funded all of that. It brought about voting rights for prisoners. It brought about a lot of things that progressive politicians would not get behind until they had a court ruling that said, well, you know, it's not up to me, but the court said I have to do it. To me, it always seemed like it funded the things that progressives wanted, but progressive politicians were afraid to stand up and tell the voters, this is what I'm for.
Like the money went to two different clusters of people, Brian, so let me be clear about that. It originally funded English language groups inside Quebec and French language groups outside of Quebec to sue for language rights in the various provinces. And that went on for many years. Then in 1985, it takes on women's groups, feminist groups, gay and lesbian groups, disability groups to sue for different kinds of government programs. I think you're right. The big impact was in the gay rights revolution, same-sex benefits for same-sex couples, and then gay marriage. But it had some other successes in some other areas. The Mulroney government shut it down in 1992 as part of a budget-cutting exercise, but it was only off the books for a few years. When Mr. Crenshaw was elected in 93, he promised to recreate it and set it up in 94. The great thing about the 94 version of the Court Challenges program, he just turned the money over to the groups themselves to divide up amongst themselves. So there was no more government hand in deciding women's groups would get this, gay and lesbian groups would get that. And that existed until 2006 when the Harper government shut it down. Now we'll see Mr. Trudeau's promise to set it up again. How much what kinds of groups, what kinds of political causes is he going to finance with this thing? How much money are they going to get for each case? It will take a few years for the cases to work themselves through the courts, but I think we're going to dust off all the books about the Court Challenges program and take another look at it.
Well, yeah, if we look at what's happened in the past, I think we can see an attempt to shut down any kind of security laws that touch on terrorism because the security certificates were challenged in the past. I think we can also see, from the average family's point of view, the attempt to get rid of the spanking provisions in the criminal code, which are severely restricted by Supreme Court jurisprudence, but activists have never even accepted that, and they want any interactions between parent and child to be treated as the same as interactions between you and I.
I think the spanking issue will be back. You're right. The one that I think will be a little trickier is the polygamy. There'll be more cases at some point from British Columbia and elsewhere about the definition.
Oh, downtown Toronto?
The main thrust of the gay and lesbian rights cases of 15 or 20 years ago, I think they've carried their way through. There may be some other cases they want to take on, but I think the bulk of the impact there has been felt. I think we're going to have to take a look and see, and I haven't followed this carefully because we didn't have to, now take a look and see what cluster of groups get the funding under the Court Challenges program and exactly what sorts of issues they plan to take to court.
Let me ask you this. In the past, were conservative groups successful in getting funding for their causes, or was this exclusively or almost exclusively a left-wing slush fund?
Well, look, it's a generation ago now, so lots of us have forgotten, but Real Women, the more conservative women's group, applied for money from the Core Challenges program, applied for money from the federal government, and was rejected on every occasion in favor of more feminist groups. I don't think that before the Harper government was elected, you recall grain farmers in Western Canada ending up in court when they tried to sell grain across the border without the intermediary of the Canadian Wheat Board. I don't think any of them had any Core Challenges program money to pursue those sorts of cases. So, when you set up a program like this and turn the money over to a small, tightly knit constellation of progressive groups, they're going to finance other progressive groups. And look, Trudeau's entitled to do that. He won the election, and these are parts of the consequences of the way elections go.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. Elections do have consequences. This is one of them, and we're going to feel it for a long time to come. Ian Brodie at the University of Calgary, thanks so much.
Talk to you, Brian.